The power and authority crediting system. The debate over the idea of things such as social credit scoring systems has typically been viewed as a discussion on a dystopian future. Obviously, the idea of those in your community being able to judge each other and those judgments having real world consequences and repercussions would indeed be a dystopian nightmare. And based on the principles of Pandora's box, this technology being engineered and implemented at this very moment means that it's more than a probability that some sort of algorithmic means of social obedience will eventually be implemented in nations around the world. One could only imagine the amount of cultural cohesion this would force upon those within the crosshairs of this form of authoritarian techno-tyranny. So, the question I ask you, the people of a free nation, why should the crosshairs be focused on the free people, and why should the elected public servants and those who are in positions of authority, which can only be granted to them by the free people they serve, be the ones with their finger on the trigger? After all, if the so-called free citizens are bound by rule of law with threat of force if we deviate from said law, then shouldn't those who we the people grant authority to create and enforce such laws be bound by the same rule of law and under the same threat? A common subject of debate is who polices the police, and discussion often results in the realization that we indeed do have a two-tiered justice system. This has become abundantly apparent in the current political sphere here in our so-called constitutional republic. We used to believe that no man is above the law. We used to believe in liberty and justice for all. We used to believe in those with whom we cast our votes, and to whom we granted power to make decisions that are meant to serve in the best interests of the people. We used to trust in police officers to keep our communities safe and to uphold the law. But now, in the age of technology, we the people are granted, for the first time in human history, a glimpse of clarity. We are able to do our own digging and investigation into the dirty misdeeds and backdoor deals made by those we grant power to. We are able to see when our local police officers abuse their authority almost in an instant with the implementation of things like dash and body cameras. Social media platforms like Twitter have given the people a global town square to share ideas and opinions, and to shed light on corruption that would have otherwise been hidden in darkness, if not for those careful watchmen and defenders of liberty. Indeed, the digital age has placed the possibility of immense power squarely into the hands of the people, and we the people cannot allow this power to become weaponized against us. Force can only be implemented by way of fear. We adhere to the rule of law due to basic fear of loss of life. Whether that is by death or imprisonment, fear of loss of life has always been what preserves order in all civilizations since, well, ever. However, those in power avoid that fear due to the simple fact of modern civilization generally frowning upon the idea of revolution and insurrection as a means of keeping those in power honest. And to be honest, I don't think most modern men have the same gusto as the founding fathers anyway. So how do you use force on those in power without using actual physical force? You simply have to find out what they fear, and for those in power, their only fear is the loss of power. If we've learned anything from cancel culture, it's that the internet can indeed be a real place with real world consequences, especially for those with something to lose. And the court of public opinion often acts swiftly and harshly. Yet, like a bunch of simple-minded animals, we choose to use this power on each other. Meanwhile, those who rule over society grow in power day by day as American culture fragments and divides. Day by day, the police become more militarized and begin to view the public they swore to protect as enemy combatants. And day by day, it seems the only thing our lawmakers can come to a bipartisan agreement on is laws that seem to restrict the people and grant power to the state in the name of safety. Well, any fool who will trade their individual liberty for a false sense of safety shall receive and deserve neither. The truth is, we have a savior complex, and the truth is also that power, authority, and rule of law is necessary in a free society in order to preserve that freedom for all. The problem that tends to eventually arise in a republic is when both parties decide to work together in order to give the government totalitarian authority over the people who elect them. And the problem with our current form of voting is that it only gives the people an illusion of choice. The unfortunate reality is that Americans tend to get amnesia to things like corruption and failed policy, especially when voting is only held every 2 years. And the establishment is well aware of this. Furthermore, immediately following election season, it seems to turn into corruption and damage control season. And the only time the will of the opinions of the constituency seems to matter is during election season, and year after year we're treated to more and more demagoguery and simple empty promises. While election season may only come every 2 to 4 years, politics is a year-round battlefield. Constituency approval should have greater implications on both level of authority granted to the representative of those people to make decisions on their behalf, and should serve as a continuous rating for the culmination of their time in public service. The mistakes and misdeeds of those we choose to put into power should have some sort of lasting consequences, and on the contrary, those who serve their duty to the people in the best ways possible should be rewarded with more power and authority, for they have proven themselves to be of noble character. Think of it like a stock ticker, but instead of you investing money in a company, you're granting and withdrawing power from public servants. Not only would those in power be bound to the will of those they represent, they would be able to accurately get an understanding of what is expected of them by those they represent in order to more accurately represent the will of the people. On the smaller scale and within the local community, the effects on policing and tax-funded public services would be great. As I mentioned previously, society is kept in order by fear of loss of life, and we grant certain people authority to use such force within the community to preserve order and rule of law. The problem we find is when it comes to holding them to the same standards, and due to our two-tiered justice system, those in positions of power tend to operate with impunity. Therefore, it should fall on the members of the local community to decide on an individual basis who should and should not have authority of force upon the communities they serve. The people should have the ability to strip individuals who continue to show a lack of regard for the civil liberties of the citizens without the need for internal investigations conducted by their own colleagues. In the same way that the Fed can be replaced by a computer, internal affairs can be replaced with an algorithm. Furthermore, with policing, we see a problem with the incentive system. For the work that is expected of police officers, the compensation is not much incentive to maintain integrity, especially when faced with situations such as bribery. Dirty cops on the criminal's payroll isn't just a thing in movies, but an actual common fact of reality. Obviously, the incentive to bring down a cartel ring is just pennies compared to what they pay you to look the other way, and police officers' recognition only tends to last within the community until the news vans leave, and then they go right back to being looked at just like all the rest of the dirty and corrupt cops. With the power credit scoring system, the recognition from that one moment can result in long-lasting public trust and further their individual career without having to rely on climbing a fraternal and possibly corrupt ladder. Now, I know using terms like forcing, canceling, stripping of power, and doing what's expected of them sound like authoritarian terms, and you'd be absolutely right. But the truth is, power must not be left unchained if we wish to maintain a free society and avoid falling into totalitarian despotism. The system of checks and balances cannot work when after 250 years, every person within the system has become corrupt themselves. Positions of immense power are an immense responsibility, and not something that should honestly be strived for, but earned or bestowed upon them by the people. As the saying goes, those who want power the most should be the last to have it. A problem that we commonly face in a republic is how do you get those who make the laws to make laws that would limit their own power? While a system such as this does not need to be implemented by way of legislation and can in fact be done solely by the people, it can be implemented upon an unwilling ruling class much in the same way they choose to strip us of our very essential liberties. Using the frog in the pot method, a small team of app developers can create an app which would allow voters to voice their approval or disapproval of their representatives in real time. If something like this can be integrated into social media platforms like Twitter, it can grow in popularity and usage rapidly over time. Once it has caught on and becomes a tool of public discussion, the real-world application will begin to demonstrate its value as it begins to influence our voting habits and serves as a sort of permanent record for individual representatives. The establishment obviously won't like this and will try to ban it. At this point, the fight has begun. When the public realizes the government is attempting to protect itself from being held accountable to the people will take notice. And then all it takes is a few true statesmen, shaped by the ratio system, to either hold the line or push the envelope even farther. For far too long, the problem with authority and force is it's been monopolized by the state and used upon the people. And I believe it's time to even the playing field. Integrity is defined as doing the right thing when you know nobody's looking, and insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It has become clear that those we have granted power to lack any semblance of integrity. And continuing to put faith in those same people to fix the problem has obviously come to the point of insanity.